All right. So basically, in the last session, what we did was we did a recap of the first one, and so since probably it was pretty straightforward and the trial tenant was set up, there were not many doubts. So the integration basics is what is important, where it includes basic terminologies that we use for integration. Typically, if you are like an ABAP or any other development language, the language that we use in day to day for integration is a bit different. For example, integration flow, right? So integration flow. What is an integration flow? Basically, an integration flow is um, a mechanism through which a message goes from source to target. Now, the source, what we talked about is the source could be multiple things, right? It could be an application, right? And the target could also be an application. Example, you are sending material, right? Material master from, let's say, S4 HANA to Informatica. I'm giving you a practical example, which actually happens on the ground, right? So these days, Informatica is becoming our more of a MDG system, which manages data, right? So some clients are making it as a source of truth for many master data, so it gets synced up with S4 HANA. So this is an example of app to app integration. Then we have business to business. Business to business is example that let's say Amazon has its vendors, right? Amazon will procure goods and then sell to the customer. Or probably Amazon is not the right example. It could be a company like Boat, right, which manufactures the headphones. So Boat obviously will get the spare parts from somewhere, the raw materials, right? Uh, so let's say it gets a raw material from a company called Samsung for chips, right? So then it will build integration directly with them to automate the step, right? Because it will happen in thousands of transactions. So you would want to automate that. So that is an example of business to business integration. Then business to consumer is this one is an example which we can use for Amazon, so which is a B2C kind of model. So Amazon sometimes has its own product as well, right? Some Solimo brand and all of that. So let's say Amazon is directly selling to me as a consumer, a retail customer. So it's a B2C uh, kind of model. And then B2G. B2G is business to government. So here we talked about an e-way bill. I think Nursing would be able to relate to it because I know he has worked in some domestic implementations where um, e-way bill is one of the mandatory requirement to move your goods from one state to another, right? So this is an integration between. So companies often build interfaces with the government website. So that is the to get the e-way bill. So that is example of business to government, right? So overall, integration as a concept is that you did someone dropped. Okay, Nursing. I see two by your name. You're still there, right? Hey, Nursing. Hello.
Hello? Yes, yes, I can hear.
You're there with us, right? I think you dropped and
Yes,
joined back.
yes.
Okay, fine. Okay, so integration as a concept, basic terminologies like what is integration when we transfer source data to target, right? When one application or organization or a government is interacting with another party and exchanging some data. In a very simple, plain language, this is what an integration is. Now, in the software world, obviously there are then further um, parts to it. Let's look at what are they. So we talked about that typically when we say okay the message, or there are multiple phrases which we use, okay. So but just know that all are one and the same thing. So some people will say a message is going from source to target, some will say that a payload is going from source to target, some will just use, a layman will use the data is going from X to Y, right? So all of those things mean the same thing ultimately. It goes through a sender, there is some processing in between, and the receiver receives it. Okay, if I show you something, uh, okay, so this is what we drew yesterday. There's a sender which sends a payload. There's a processing step in between, and there's a receiver. So yesterday, I gave an exercise. I mean, the last session we gave an exercise that you will take a payload, use Postman as a software to call the CPI API, send some payload, and CPI or BTP IS will process it, and then it will be received by the receiver. Okay, so this is a very very simple example of a basic integration flow. Okay, just something to remember, Ganeshwari and nursing, is that um, there are terms which are alternatively used for a product called CPI, right? So actually, SAP is known to keep changing its names, because it feels that it's reinventing something, so the name should also be changed. So the original name when it started was, I think it was very early 2015-16 timeframe. It was known as HCI, HANA Cloud Integration, right? And then it became CPI, Cloud Platform Integration. Then latest it is called just CI, Cloud Integration. Okay, just this is for knowledge sake, so don't get confused. Since maybe CPI was used for a longest time, people are more comfortable with using CPI, right? So uh, we should practice using the latest term always, just for the benefit of everyone. But just if I use the alternative terms, then you should know why. Okay. Then we looked at a more enhanced scenario of the same thing, wherein we said that this portion we added adapters, sender and receiving adapter. So this all highlighted box is a part of the middleware. So the sender sends a payload, and then there's a sender adapter which converts that payload to middleware friendly format, and then the middleware further converts into sends it to adapter, and adapter helps us interact with the receiver without doing a lot of customization, right? So that's what the only purpose of adapter is. It is not actually, sorry, I might have missed it, it is not actually converting any payload. It is enabling the nursing. My voice is echoing because of your system. Thank you. So basically, let's say I connect to X and Y. For that, I have to do several steps, right? So I have to specify the HTTP endpoint, then I have to change my payload type, then I have to choose some, let's say if it's an OData, I have to choose some OData entities. So adapter minimizes those steps. So adapter, some of the things adapter takes care of, like let's say my target is expecting ISO Unicode converted format, for example. So if I'm using an adapter, it will do that conversion inbuilt for me, right? I don't have to do that. So that's what an adapter does. Yes, nursing. I think you had a question, right?
So the purpose of using this adapter is just to decoupling the things or something else. Like earlier also, this the functionality which adapters are doing must be in CPI itself, right?
So see, all the functionality is there, but it may need more customization. So imagine it as there's a function module which SAP has given you, and then you can write the same function module on your own as well, right? So it is just doing that purpose. So adapter just minimizes those steps. I'll show you later on as well. All the integration can be just done by HTTP adapter only, like the basic adapter HTTP. But let's say I'm using OData, right? What is the difference between OData and HTTP? OData also uses the same protocol underlying HTTP, but OData gives you some additional features. For example, it will let you choose what entities you want to push the data. तो इन नटशेल वो आपका काम थोड़ा इजी कर देता है, इट मेक्स योर लाइफ अ बिट इजियर, सो इट सेव्स सम कस्टमाइजेशन. ओके, ठीक है. ऑलराइट, सो लेट्स प्रोसीड टू द नेक्स्ट स्टेप. Yeah, so next is what are the key parts. Now we're talking about, so we talked about sender, receiver, we talked about the iFlow. Now let's talk about what are the key portions of a payload, and then we'll go to the URL. Okay, so when I am sending a payload, right, and this will be relatable to the content modifier, right? When I'm sending a payload, there are, from a CPI perspective, there are three parts of a payload. One is a header, one is a property, and the third and main thing is a body, right? Now, in a normal integration world, you don't have something called as properties. So properties is a CPI specific word, but header and body is a universal thing. If you talk to anyone in the industry, let's say you are building an interface with a third party called Ariba or anything else, right? So if you talk to them, okay, I need the format of your body of the message, they will understand. If you tell them, okay, what headers are you going to send, they will understand, right? So uh, headers and body are generic terms. Properties is CPI specific. Now, what is body? Body is the main data that you are trying to send. Example, yesterday we tried this example. If I take you to body, oh sorry, in this there is no body. So this one. This is my data, right? This is order ID and this is amount. So this is my data that is sent in body typically. I mean, you can also send data in other ways, which we will cover later on. Like one is header also, you can send some data. And then there are parameters also, which you can use. But typically, majority of the data is hosted here. Then header. Header is typically your metadata. This is imagine as like in SAP context also, header is typically which is applicable for the entire thing. You mark that as header, right? So similarly here, it's a metadata. For example, if I am authenticating using a token, then my token will be part of the header called authorization like this, and here the token will be set. Then things like content type, right? In some cases, this is very, very important. What kind of content type? What format of the message am I sending? Sometimes the third party interprets my data format according to this, and then uses it to interpret the payload again, right? So content length, all of those. So header is a metadata. Now properties, as I said, property is a CPI specific thing or a cloud integration specific thing. So why do we use it? Consider properties as, I mean, it solves a lot of purpose, especially in cloud integration. I mean, because it is very useful. It can act as a variable. Then to make your, so there is a, you understand that CPI or cloud integration, right? Cloud integration is a low code. I mean, we write it as in short LCNC platform, which is low code, no code. So when we say low code, no code, a majority of it is designing and then configuration and a bit of coding as well, right? So that configuration part is uh, supported heavily by properties, right? Because there is a concept of externalization, which I will cover later, through which you can make your property as configurable, or not just property, the configure. I mean, any parameter that you set on your iFlow, you can make it as a configurable part using externalization, right? So properties is used for that. Properties can also be used just like headers to pass some metadata. It can be used to pass data from one iFlow to another iFlow, like within the CPI purview. Then it can be used to pass data from different parts of an iFlow to other parts of an iFlow, right? So that is what the properties is used for. Okay. So far, so good. Any questions?
So from a web perspective, like what may be the metadata, like the structure or what?
A web perspective, when you call in FM, right? FM के जो import parameters हैं, right? That is also more of a data. No, that is not the right example. So when you create a program, right, you set some attributes.
Yes.
SE38, you create a program and then you select those attributes. That is like a metadata of your program. Okay. Okay. And then just important point is, I think that try to understand it without relating it to a web perspective, because this is very, very different. The subject is different. So focus on how we think in integration concept, right? Otherwise, you'll not be able to step out mentally of that trap of being a web developer. Okay, just FYI.
Okay.
Okay, so last part of this integration basics is URL. So this is the Postman tool. I'll tell you a bit about this as well. But just have a look at it. There is, let's say, an address of an API or a web service. Right, the complete address of it is called a URL. Right. Let me. I'm just trying to go in the cloud integration as well. Trials. Okay, if you see this, so any URL that you see on your website, right? I mean, any address. So this complete address is called a URL. But if we break that down in this URL, the part here up to .com, which is typically the how the hosts are represented through a DNS, is called your host, and the part after that is called an endpoint. Okay, so we used yesterday. I mean, in the examples that we did, we used this concept to split the URL by so that I can hide the host name, right? So this is a complete URL to my iFlow, and it is typically made up of a host name and an endpoint. Okay, so endpoint is the unique identifier to every service, every API. That's what an endpoint is. Okay. All right. So and quickly, I hope you have downloaded this tool, uh, nursing, because I think Dhaneshri has already. So this is Postman. It's available for free. You can download on your personal laptop. Uh, this we will be using for all of our rest of our sessions to call to test our APIs that we create, test our artifacts, iFlows that we create on cloud integration, right? So there are two main parts of a Postman. One is your collections, and the other one is environments, which we will use. There are other parts as well, but primarily this is what we will use for the course. Collections is nothing but a collection of, consider it as a place where you will create the packages to club your request. Now, what is a request? A request is something which gives a structure to your API calls. So if you see under collections, you see several collections. One is CPI information, modeling basics, new collection, SAP IS day 3. So these are nothing but consider it as a package. Just like in a app we have package. Similarly, here we have package to club the requests, right? And same way we have package in CPI to club the artifacts. So here it is called collection instead of a package, right? And each package has request, right? And what does the request contain? Request will contain, number one is, the main thing is your URL of your iFlow. Then you choose a method, right? It is a get, post, put, patch, delete. Now, how do you choose that method? It depends on what operations you have enabled on your iFlow. Right now, even if it is I mean, even if I'm posting some data, I can use a get here also. That will also work, right? But typically, in a perfect world, where we are not doing a trial setup, we do checks. Like if I'm creating an API, I typically check that if I meant for this endpoint to get data for me, nobody is posting data to this endpoint, right? So this is a concept of HTTP methods, and this is standard industry wide. This is nothing related to SAP. This is industry wide. Get, put, post, patch, merge, right? So post is typically like your create data, right? Get is read data. Put is update, right? And then patch and merge are similar. They will check if the entry is existing, it will update, otherwise it will create. Then delete is obviously from its name, and head and options is something that I do not use regularly, but maybe we can. That's what the same thing I said to Ganesh as well. Maybe I'll have to read a bit about it, and maybe you could find out that what are they used for. But like I particularly haven't used them so far. Then we have authorization. So this, remember, under collection we are talking about one request. How does a request structure looks like? So request has URL, HTTP method. Then parameters is just so we will see later. Uh, with the URL, you can also send some parameters like to make your request dynamic. Let's say I have an endpoint and I have different countries in my company, and I want to enable different functionality for all of them. So I can send some parameters along with it, which can say dollar country. To send parameters, you have to put a dollar in front of it, right? And then that's what, as soon as you enter it here, it will appear. Then authorization, we have several types. We'll go deeper into this, but just understand that this is for authorization, where typically right now we are using username and password. So it contains the username and password, but there are other options like OAuth, JWT bearer, OAuth 2.0, API key, right? And there are other centers as well. But typically from a SAP CPI standpoint, what we use is 90% of the times is OAuth 2.0. In some cases, it is bearer token, like for iFlow case especially, which we will see in a while. Um, then in some cases you send JWT bearer as well, different kind of authentication mechanism. Right, we'll go deeper into the authentication section. This is header, which I already showed you. Body is also, which I showed you. Scripts is with, this is a Postman feature actually, wherein you can write scripts to automate a few things. Right, for example, um, based on what response you get as an output from the request, you can say that this test passed or failed, right? This is a way of automation testing. I did that in one of the projects, so probably I'll create an example and show you something like that. So but not used on a regular basis. Scripts only in certain scenarios we use, because Postman is just a tool for us to enable our testing. It's not the main deliverable to the client, right? In Unless Postman is actually a middleware tool that the client is using, which I've not seen so far. And settings is just some high level settings like which HTTP version you want to use, do you want to enable certification verification and all of that, right? So just some high level stuff there. Okay. Any questions on Postman so far before I proceed?
So we use means every type of project we use Postman for CPI integration, right?
Hmm.
It is
Unless
something like, yeah.
they go. So there are two. Postman is a free tool, right? But some companies may not have Postman. May not allow you to use Postman as a tool because of security reasons, and they only want to use license version, which they may or may not have. So in such cases, you will need to use other tools. So there are many tools to call an API. I'm covering Postman because it's the most widely used and most user friendly tool. If you Google as well, it will appear in first three at least, I would say. But there are tools like SOAP UI, which SOAP UI is very good for XML based. So in short, I would say yes, this is the tool that we mostly use to test our APIs or call our APIs.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So let's go to CPI. So this package is what I shared yesterday also. But the idea is that you should first try and create it yourself. Okay. So basically, so this is the scenario which, if you remember, I just showed in here. This is this scenario. Simple, right? No, sorry. This it has adapters too, right? So if we try to relate it, so sender adapter, processing, and receiver adapter, and then receiver. Okay. Now, basically, uh, so this sender is just notional. Okay, this is what we use to indicate that this is a sender. And as a good naming convention practice, we actually name it. For example, right now I'm using Postman. I mean, because I don't have a third party system, right? So let's assume Postman is our actual sender, which will send this. So Postman is my sender, and receiver is we are using a free service, nursing, which I had showed yesterday, called HTTP bin. Right? It's just a free service that we're using to practice here. Okay. So now, what are the parts of this iFlow? We talked about sender adapter, content modifier is a palette which we'll just talk about in a minute, and then receiving adapter and receiver. Okay. Then, so this is a sender adapter. We use HTTPS. So what does this mean? That the external party will be able to call me using a HTTPS enabled endpoint. Now, like we said, what is an endpoint? It uniquely identifies your artifact. In this case, it's iFlow. So I gave an address called slash content modifier 2. Okay. So now you should say that how we will see the full URL. Can you tell me what will be the full URL of this if I want to call this from Postman? No. So
Somewhere
basically,
we have put the host name like URL as a variable and then
uh,
endpoint.
no, variable. So variable comes later. Variable, don't pay attention to that. Variable is to make, just like in ABAP we make things reusable and for protection. Here it is mainly for protection and then reusability as well. But that comes later. But if I want to just call the straight URL, how would you know that? So I mean, one thing is you can put a host name and then this endpoint, but not exactly. How you need to check the URL is once I deploy this, right? It shows me navigate to manage integration content, right? I click that, open, so it will take me to integration content, and here it will show me the URL, right? This is the complete URL. If I just put this here, it will work, right? What I've only done is this part till this. I've maintained in a variable environment, which is called environment variable, to obviously reuse it. But the main purpose here to, I mean, it's always a good practice to use it because of the security reasons, so that if you are looking at my screen, you cannot easily find out, right? Unless I stay my cursor here, you cannot read the URL otherwise. Okay, clear?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now let's talk about content modifier. So we talked about three parts of a message, right? Message header, exchange property, and then body, right? So content modifier exactly allows you to do that. What does it allow? So basically, you can change your message, right? You can overwrite your message, or you can manipulate your message. Three things, right? Change meaning you can completely replace it. Overwrite meaning again same thing. Sorry, change meaning that you can change a part of your message. Overwrite meaning that you can completely change, overwrite with it something else, or you can. The third part is also enrich, right? Which is similar to number one, which is change. But let's say don't want to change, you want to add something more to it. So that also you can do, right? So we use variables, not really variables. I would call it as they are more like a language, right? So the one of the critical things that we should know is that the integration suite, cloud integration as a iPaaS software. iPaaS is integration platform as a service, is built in a framework called Apache Camel framework. Okay, Apache Camel framework. So inside it uses, and many of the other what should I say? Many of the other iPaaS softwares or other integration softwares are also based on the same framework, Apache Camel framework. It's like a runtime engine, right? So Apache Camel has its own language as well. So using those language expression, we can change it, right? So there are common things which we will see as we go along. Now, for now, just I think I went a step further because I didn't discuss this yesterday, but we will go more into that. But just for now, just understand it. Why I'm telling you is, if you see, I've added a source system as a header, which is a constant, and I've added a value. Now, I've also added an expression. Now, this expression is based on right now. There's no language that we're using here, so it is more of an expression where I'm saying that get this property from the existing header. So this is a part of the CPI framework. When it will run in the runtime, this property will have some value, which it will show you, right? And and then processing date, and then message body. So in this example, I am retaining the original body, right? But let me first show you the portion where I actually replace the body, right? Same thing here. These two examples are very, very simple. The only difference between, and the name also is changed accordingly. In this, I'm replacing the body. In the other one, I'm retaining the body, right? So same thing here, no change. Processing date, only difference is here I'm replacing the body. So when I run this, what should you expect in the output? Can you tell me?
So whatever we send, this hard-coded body will come. It
Sure.
will
So
return.
yeah, so see, yeah, good, right answer. um, it's just that the target endpoint which we're using, HTTP bin, it basically further enhances within. So that's outside of CPI completely. It further enhances whatever you send, and on top of it, it will also add some metadata to it. Right? We'll see that. Um, Now in this nursing, if you see, I'm sending no body. The body is set to none. In authorization, I have set client ID and client secret. So after the session, I'll show you how to get this for your own tenant, to call the CPI iFlow. And then this is the complete URL if you give. It's the same URL. Okay. Content modifier one for the first time. Now I'll send this request. So if you see some of the metadata, headers, and then this is my body which I replaced. Right. Abhi, let me show you one more thing, I think, which will make it even more clearer. Let me use a body actually here. Do you think I will get the same body or it will get overwritten? Anybody?
It will get overridden.
And the reason why?
Because in the content modifier, we are sending that body is replaced by content modifier.
Perfect. Perfect. Nursing clear?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. So this content modifier overwrote my body. Abhi, just watch one more thing, right? I think, are they returning headers? All of it here. Okay, if you see, it's not returning me all the headers. So let me show you something. I think that's probably a limitation from this endpoint. But what happened to the body? But we could not see what happened to the headers. Right? So just remind me towards the end of the session. I'll also show you how to get the CPI helper. It's an external tool which helps us do a better tracing. Last session we could not talk about it. All right. So I ran this in trace now, right? So if I click here and show you this now, okay, first go to properties. So you see this processing date, right? This processing date came, and this value of the date came. This came from that content modifier. Headers. In the header, we added source system, right? So this one came. And in the body, the replaced body came, right? Clear so far?
Sachin, one thing I did not understand, like why in the real-time scenario, like why do we use headers?
Um, there are a lot of requirements. I mean, see, header, why do we use? It's actually very simple to answer, but I'm thinking what is the best way to make you understand. So one very basic example that you saw, if I will use a OAuth token, for example, right? Then this authorization will be carried in a header, right? As a bearer token. For example, if I show you this, right? So that's one very important use of, let's say, if you're using OAuth 2.0, then the header, then the token goes as a part of the header, right? That's one basic example. Then, like I told you, right, content type. So in some cases, what happens is, like, this is out of my experience as well. When we, let's say, interact with some third parties, sometimes the way they have written their APIs is that, let's say, they are written to only interpret JSON format, right? And your JSON format that you are sending is not correct, right? So it will throw an error. I mean, so sometimes we have to do a hard overwrite over that. How? Because let's say you think that your JSON payload is correct, and the other party is still not accepting it. So what we do is we populate content type is equal to application slash JSON. So this will kind of do a hard command to them that, boss, the payload that I'm sending is JSON, so please accept it. So that is one purpose, right? So so I told you one difference between headers and properties. Do you remember what is that? What is the difference between a header and a property?
I don't remember.
So header is used industry wide, like it's a common integration concept, but properties is within CI, cloud integration. Okay. Now, one of the purpose of that is headers can travel from one system to another as a part of the request that you send. For example, um, these all the headers, we don't need it in cloud integration, right? But Postman pre-populates it automatically. And if I show you the starting step, this is the very beginning before even entering to the cloud integration space. Sorry, HTTP adapter. So this step. Okay. So you see the headers. Host connection. I think right now also it's not showing all, but let me take you to the. What I'm trying to show you is that when I sent this request from Postman, all these headers, I don't need it. I just need a couple of them, like maybe the authorization and content type. That's it, right? But it is still traveling to my content modifier. Sorry, to my cloud integration iFlow. So in some cases that can be very useful, right? So header is something that can travel from one system to another apart from the body, right? So you can tell the other party um, about your type of payload or authorization or anything else related to this, right? So that is the key purpose of a header. Hope that made some sense.
Yes.
Okay. So see, here it shows the full thing. If you see, this is just before entering the flow, right? This is the before message, HTTPS. So it has all the headers from this thing, from outside. If I want, I can restrict it as well, right? So that facility is also there. Okay, so just let's quickly wind up this one. So the other iFlow, what is the difference? Here I asked cloud integration to not overwrite it, to maintain this, right? So let's see what happens in this case. So in this case, I got the payload as it is, right? So how did we achieve that? We achieved that using just an expression. This is the expression that I was talking. This is the Apache language. I used dollar in dot body, right? So it represents the entire payload content, excluding the header, just the body. So it represents the body of your payload, right? And then header added these. That was common here in the previous one, right? So to wind up the session, Nursing, you have a question?
Yeah. So I just want to make myself clear that we will use this body, this sign when we want to pass the payload as it is to the third party system with no change, right? And if we want to make some change, like we want to convert some part of the data, then we can use that the first one you
Ah,
told, right?
yeah. So in that case, we don't even need if you need to pass the body as it is to the receiver, you don't even need to use a content modifier. Okay.
Okay.
So it's a tactic. Abhi hum, we are building on the ground level, right? We are at the ground level and we're building the concepts. ये imagine it as जैसे in example in ABAP you sometimes will store a huge amount of data, right, in a table temporarily, or you maintain a TVRVSC variable. So this is like that. We will store the payload sometimes temporarily to do something on it, and then uh, reuse it, restore the payload. Because sometimes what happens is this is, we are talking about very simple scenarios right now, but there will be case where your payload will be overwritten, right? Because I make an extra call. इसको इमेजिन इट एज अ पाइपलाइन, ठीक है? अब इस पाइपलाइन में से मैं अगर एक और एक्सटर्नल रिक्वेस्ट कॉल करूंगा इन बिटवीन, देन दैट रिक्वेस्ट विल, जो रिस्पॉन्स आएगा दैट विल ओवरराइट माय पाइपलाइन, right? So let's say I have a complex scenario where I am calling X and I'm calling Y as well, and I want to retain both the payloads and later on merge them. So then I can use something like this to retain my body, right? Or I can use a variable, or there is a concept of data store, और भी बहुत सारी चीजें हैं. तो that is why I am trying to tell this. Okay. अभी the what I wanted to show you before just ending this session, कि what are the basic things, right? You take a sender, you connect to the, oh, this is a timer, so let me take a start. Okay. Okay, I think let me stop the recording, guys, first, because I don't want to lose it this time. Then we'll continue. We have time. We have time. Okay, let me show you this. Okay. So how do you create your first iFlow? You go to the package, go into the edit mode, add integration flow, give some useful name. Let's say my second iFlow. You can give anything in the description and add and open in the editor, or just add. Either thing you can. If you click on add and open in the editor, it will directly open. So by default, if you see, you will have these three entities: sender, receiver, and integration process. So sender represents your sender in actual world, and then it will ask you to choose an adapter. Now, depending on what your alignment is with the third party, in majority of the case it is HTTPS, but it could be other adapters as well, which we'll deep dive as, like, we'll cover many adapters as we go. But for now, let's take it a HTTP adapter, and then similarly for this. So here also I will use HTTP. Yeah. Okay, now if you just activate this and deploy it, what will happen is whatever request you send, it will return you back, right? And then the later example that we saw, that then you add content modifier, or you add, like, we'll make this as complicated as it gets as we go along. So
Sachin,
here,
I just have one question.
sure.
So it is the one way flow only, or if I want to return something, we are using, for example, we are using HTTP bin. So that website is for whatever we send, it will return.
Hmm.
So like there should be like the arrow should be like returning to sender also, like that also. Do we create the iFlows if we are not using HTTP bin?
Good question. So basically, I think I missed one crucial part. Let me just cover that quickly. But whatever you are sending from here, right, it will return back. So integration is by default, which we create here, depending on what kind of adapters you use. Like in this case, it is synchronous. So what does synchronous mean? That it will return you the response right away, right? So unless, so in short, what you send, you will get back. Let me actually show you. Can you check if this URL was correct? I was just trying to see where I've written this HTTP bin. Oh, that's strange. Okay. Okay. Uh, Remember to uncheck this. I'll explain later why. CSRF protected. Uh, so this is an extra security feature for which then you have to take a CSRF token. But for now, just remember that we have to uncheck this. Okay. So first time it takes a time to show up. Organization is the same. Border is the same. Oh, sorry, my bad. I think I designed it exactly the same. So let me show you. So instead of this, I will do this. Okay, so this will answer your query, huh? Then issue. Just pay attention. So what I did was, there's no receiver right now. Okay, but even if there is a receiver, you were getting the response back instantaneously, right? So it's a synchronous call. It's both ways. It's not just one way. Okay. Right now, let's see what happens now. What happened? It returned the same body, right? Because it just sent the body. Nothing happened here. There's no processing, and since the response was not changed, the body was not changed. The body came back, right? So it's always a synchronous request by default. Now there are ways to make it asynchronous by using queues or um, primarily using JMS queues is what we use, but there are AMQP and other adapters as well when we use event-based framework through which we can make it as asynchronous.